Good afternoon. Today is Monday, April 21st, 2025. This Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Here.
Present.
Present.
Thank you. I know we have guests. I always do guests first, so if the guests from Muni League can join us at the table. Thank you. All right. Director Nichols, Commissioner Gisson-Tanner, welcome. This is ordinance number 378-2025 by Council Members Bishop, Griffin, and Starr by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Parks and Recreation to enter into a contract with the Northeast Ohio Muni Football League, aka Cleveland Municipal Football Association, DBA Cleveland Muni Football League, to conduct a citywide youth football program. Director, introduce us to your guests.
Joe Record.
Let's give them the mic if we could, Joe and Jason.
Joe Record, President of Cleveland Muni Football, and to my left is Jason Gott, who's the Director of Cleveland Muni.
Welcome, gentlemen. And just on behalf of council and especially on behalf of me, thank you for what you guys do. I know that all three of my sons played Muni League football, and it's a very important thing that helped save a lot of us coming up, including Mr. Gisson-Tanner. So appreciate you guys and all the work that you do. This ordinance, Director Nichols, did you want to go over this and what this is and what we're trying to do here?
Good afternoon, Council President, Chairperson. At this time, the Parks and Recreation Department is requesting an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Parks and Recreation and to enter into a contract with the Northeast Ohio Muni Football League. This organization does provide a variety of youth enrichment activities through sports to people in our community. And what we're asking for is a one-year agreement from April of this year through November of this year. What we would have been doing for the last several years is providing financial support to the Muni League to ensure that this program does continue to provide and support for our young adults. Our contract number is CT 7004 PS 2024 0174, and the amount is $160,000.
Thank you. Commissioner Gisson-Tanner, did you want anything to add to this?
Yes, Chairman, I want to add that the Division of Recreation has been supporting this piece for about 90 years. This is a positive outlet for kids and cheerleaders in the city of Cleveland, so yes.
Thank you. Mr. Record, Mr. Dunn.
Okay, you want to go ahead, Jason. Start.
All right, how you doing today, Council?
Great.
Okay. Council President, so Muni football, you know, we have gone away from just traditional tackle football during the fall time, and you know, which is the reason why we're going from April to November. During the springtime, we have incorporated flag football, which has grown for us. We've been doing flag football since 2017. In 2017, we started with roughly 5 organizations, around 100 kids. We are now up to over 100 teams and over 1,200 kids that's participating in spring flag football with us. We also had 2 all-girls teams last year. This year, we have 18 all-girls flag football teams, you know, which is tremendous. So that's showing the growth of the Muni League. You know, and I said that's just springtime. Flag football was, you know, we started unbudgeted, so that was just something that we just, you know, we made happen. So with flag football and tackle football, which has become a year-round program for us, I know we've been, you know, trying to get more funding, along with security, because security is just, you know, really expensive for us, trying to secure and keep, you know, our families safe, keep our you know, our athletes safe on game day. we're looking at going away from just using elite security service to actually doing Cleveland police officers this year. So just want you guys to take that into consideration with the 160 that we're getting. The budget is much more than that once we put that security piece in there.
All right, thank you. Mr. Record?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Jason was saying, just looking at the numbers of participants and family that come out to our games over the weekend, would you, council, would you guess at how many people we have out on Saturday and Sunday? If any of you have a guess, we have.
Yeah, share.
Okay, we got over 17 to 20,000 people. We use, on the weekend, we use 5 locations on Saturday and Sunday, so that's just 10 locations over the weekend. And when you start talking about security, okay, I'm using a company called Elite Security, and they've been very good for us. But I will have 2 armed guys there, and we have 2 people at the gate. And the 2 people at the gate, their responsibility is to check bags and warn people coming in. But now we have to go to CPD because you find they get more respect. If someone get ornery with them, they're like, boy, I can make your weekend great by just taking you and putting you in jail. So that takes care of that. So this year, that's what we're looking to do. And that cost is great. When you look at $48 an hour, and we're going to put 2 CPD officers at each field, along with private guys. And the private guys cost $35 an hour, and so you add those the 48 and 35 together, and times that by 24, and we're working 6 hours a day. That's quite a bit, and I don't have those numbers here in front of me, but I can forward it to you, and that's just the security part of it. All right, and we're adding another layer of staff because the number of people we have coming in. If you just look at the football teams, the average team is about 25 players per team. Okay, so if at a game you have anywhere between 75 to 100 people on the field, and that's between players, coaches, and other staff members. So Muni is always been costly, and the budget, the funding that we get from the city is only 1/3 of it. The rest of it have to go out and raise, and that's been my job, to get out and raise those funds. Okay, and so I could go on and break down things. My biggest concern is what we're doing with the coaches and kids. And my humble opinion, the backbone of Muni football is the coaches, because without the coaches, there's no Muni football. And so Jason set up training classes for the coaches. What we did was, when council took us from 80 to 60,000, I did away with team fees. So it does not cost teams to play in Muni football. Okay.
80 to 160,000.
160,000, okay. But so now when you take a look at those coaches out there, we got over 500 volunteer coaches. Okay. Not only are they coaches, they're community activists, because they're out there in the community talking to parents and recruiting kids. And since then, we added one family services company, and we're looking at adding a second one to help in the community to see what kind of problems that parents are having with their kids or whatever. And it's just not the kids that playing football. We're doing a wraparound. with the community services, and we have a provider with the physicals this year. So we just gonna do the physicals with the kids, and it's gonna wrap around and get the siblings and also the parents and move on. So it's just not football with us. Jason's looking at doing some other type programs with it, and so I just have to make sure that everyone's covered, that we have liability taken care of, because we had some bumps in the road that ended up in court or near court, and it was legal fees that had to be handled. So and today's society is not like it was when I started with Muni 31 years ago. It was just myself and two other guys at the field, and we had games going on, and we had no problems, no security, anything. It was just the three of us running games. So, that's just part of it. I could go on, and if you give me a couple hours, I do it.
No, Mr. Recorder,
got
we
some
all
more
know
there,
what you guys do,
Yeah.
and like I said, these coaches, you're right, they are the backbone in a lot of these communities. I could tell you that, they build lifelong friendships with a lot of these children, so it's an important thing. And then we also know in this climate how some of these parents are. They want to be coaches, players, and fans and everything all in one. So sometimes you also often have confrontations, so you got to have a good security presence there. So I totally agree with that. Councilman Bishop, this was heard in your committee. I have Bishop, Polensek, McCormick, Starr.
Yes, Mr. President, we heard this in municipal services, and we fully support it for passage. Mr. President, I do have a couple questions I want to ask of the administration here and the Muni football. Do you get charged by CMSD for any usage of their facilities? Is there a cost that you have to incur from CMSD through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilman, there are no costs to Muni football for use of the school fields or city fields.
Okay. And can you talk about the fees that you charge the teams and the players? Can you briefly talk about that, to Mr.
We
President.
charge, Chair to the Councilman, we do not charge the organizations to play in Muni football.
Okay.
And if I may go on, Councilman, we wiped away the fees.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking at seeing what we could do to help them with the referee fees, because each team have to pay the referee fees.
Okay.
So we're always trying to reduce to keep more money in that organization, because that organization is responsible to buy equipment. A football helmet costs $175. And
Okay.
every 2 years, a helmet is good for 10 years, and every 2 years that helmet has to be reconditioned at anywhere from $36 to $40 a helmet.
Okay.
Okay,
So through the chair, so basically the ongoing upkeep of the teams itself has got to be fundraised through the individual teams themselves, correct?
yes.
Okay. And and the league provides the facility, the referees, and basically the structures of the league?
Yes, we do a little bit more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And now can we get a list of the facilities where the teams play, both flag and contact football?
Yes. Right now, we give you that to the chair, to the councilman. We're using CMSD
Okay.
fields. We use some private fields,
Okay.
and we have to insure the fields. Muni have to insure the fields.
Okay.
Okay. With the city, we get the in-kind service, use of the fields, and what we're doing here now with some funding, all right, from CMSD, we get in-kind service and the use of the fields.
Okay. And through the chair, do you have any cost incurred with through CMSD with do they have to have staff at that field? Do they charge you for that?
That's the in-kind service.
That's the in-kind service?
Yes.
Okay. And the city picks that up, you say?
Or the school.
Okay.
CMSD, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues. and to the administration and the folks that are here from Muni. Very, very important program. I didn't have the ability as a child to play Muni football because I lived in I lived in a wrong area off St. Clair, in the wrong area of the tracks. So we didn't have football over there. Which I missed. And then, fortunately, I was able to play at Collinwood. But the fact of the matter is, what's become very clear to me, that so many of the programs and initiatives that we took for granted in the city when I was a kid have been stripped. I see that all the time, and I hear it. And these are some of the issues I'm going to be bringing up tomorrow when I attend Tuesday and Wednesday for the CMSD meetings, as it pertains to programs and initiatives that have been taken away from our kids. So Muni football, I think, in my opinion, is more important today than it's been in any time in the history of this city, because kids had other avenues, now they don't. So what I'm trying to understand is this, and I want to go back to, first of all, your comment about security. What areas or what fields are you experiencing the biggest problem with?
Jason.
Through the chair of the council, I think the biggest area is Bump Taylor. Down in the Glenville area.
Right.
We had a lot of problems down at Bump Taylor. Collinwood, we had a fair share of problems over at Collinwood. John Adams.
Okay.
Those are probably our three problem areas.
Right. Now, based on that to the administration, is the administration aware of that so they can in turn notify the district commanders in those areas that on the days that you're playing at those fields, that they be put on special attention?
Through the chair to the councilman, absolutely.
Okay.
Each district is aware of those issues.
Because I find it extremely upsetting that someone would come to a Muni football game and want to fight. I don't get it. I mean, I've said to myself, I'm living in a world I don't understand. You might not like the officiating, you might not like what has happened on the field, but to engage in any type of violence or anything else is just totally unacceptable, and I hope there's a zero tolerance policy for people who are engaged in that they need to spend the weekend someplace, okay, rather than to incite a problem. So that takes me to my next line of questioning. And I want to thank the council president and my colleagues and the chairman of the committee for upping the dollar amount. You indicated that the 160 is only about a third?
Yes.
Okay, so outside of the 160, who would be your next biggest donor or contributor?
It's a businessman, through the chair, here in the community, and he's been doing it for years.
Okay.
And I can't.
No, I don't want you to
Yeah,
mention.
but it's not the Browns.
Yeah, okay.
Very, very
And-
active. Good
right.
guy.
So I'd be more than glad,
Yeah.
if you would let some of us know that privately, I would be more than glad to
We do
call
wanna
him
honor him
and
one day.
thank him.
If we
Thank
could.
that person, whoever that. Then you took me into my next line of questioning. How much did the Browns contribute toward Muni football?
Let's see, what, 30,000 was it?
30.
Yeah, 30,000. And if I may, through the chair, this was set up, I want to say, maybe about 25 years ago. And I may still have the first artificial check at home, all right?
Yeah.
And so it's just, 30 years. It's about 25 years.
Just 30,000.
No, it was 20 then. We just got the other 10 within the last couple of years. But this year, I did go after them to
I mean,
triple that.
this should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
This is, for them, this is chump change to support this program. For young men, and I'm so glad to hear about the flag football for young women and the cheerleading. Because for so long, young women, programs were just pushed aside. And I just commented to someone over the weekend, I'm so glad to see women's sports have finally taken off, whether it be basketball or whatever the case may be. They've come onto their own finally after years and years. And I had 3 daughters. So I have 3 daughters. So I'm so glad to see that, and that young women, the cheerleaders, the flag football, whatever, have an opportunity to become engaged in this process. But, so you got the Browns at 30, you've got someone else that's writing a check or checks. Outside of those two, who else? Do you have any other big donors? Corporations, corporates, foundations?
Yes, we do.
Okay, but I mean, anything of substantial amount?
Anywhere between 5 to 20,000.
Okay. You know, I can only say this. If there are people you want us to write to be supportive of your program or to be an advocate for your program, I'm sure every member of this body would be glad to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay? I just think we all see the problems we're dealing with in the streets. Kids need, I tell this all the time. I say this all the time. Collinwood High School saved me. The programs at Collinwood High School enticed me, hooked me, whatever you want to call it, where I didn't go the other direction, where unfortunately some of my friends did and wind up in federal penitentiaries. It's athletics, it's sports, it's extracurricular activities, it's all those things. You mentioned wraparound service, which I'm so glad, because Ted Ginn tells me all the time how important those wraparound services are to provide for kids, because I'm on the board over there. But I want to be supportive, my colleagues want to be supportive, but you got to tell us what you want us to do. That's what we need to hear. Who do we write? Who do we lobby? Da-da-da-da-da-da. I hope if anyone's watching this from the Cleveland Browns, that they would step up and do what is right. Because you can't be asking for $600 million out of the state, plus then asking the state to rebuild the interstate 71 and 480, and then you only contribute $30,000 to the Muni football program. Doesn't make no sense to me at all. To me, it irritates the living hell out of me. It irritates the living hell out of me. Maybe that's part of the problem we have in Cleveland. People who had the financial wherewithal, if they were to step up to the plate in this city, what a difference they could make. We could change lives of children and adults. But they got to understand they have to be a partner with us. So I'm going to end it right there. Let us know what you need, how we can help you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of the comments were already said. I want to thank the gentleman in front of us, as we do every single year. I've said enough about this program. It's a great program, and just really want to thank you for your public service. And Mr. President, I'd like to be added to this piece without objection.
I would too.
Clerk.
Clerk, if you could add Councilman McCormick, Polinsik. If you don't mind, without objection, everybody at this table, if you could add them to this piece. And I don't like to add all of council unless we ask them, but if you could at least make sure that all the finance committee is added to this. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. President, you know, I think I'd love to meet with the guys after in the weeks to come to better understand. I fully support this, but as Councilman Polensek said, if there's other ways that we can be supportive of the program, and just would love to kind of grab a coffee and with maybe a couple of council members to talk about that. So, really phenomenal program, and again, I want to thank you for the good work that you do on behalf of our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilman Richard Starr.
Thank you, Council President and members of the Finance Committee, and as well as Park and Recreation Department for coming here with this ordinance. I too am proud to sponsor this initiative. Just like Councilman Mike Polensik, I too played in Muni League back in the day. So I understand the importance of Muni League football as well as the direction that they're heading in. Obviously, a lot of people may not know my background, and my undergrad degree from Baldwin Wallace is in sports management, business management. So I understand the importance of sports as well as understanding the important aspect it plays into the community. I'm always proud to be able to advocate since 2022 for us to give additional dollars to Muni League football, and I'm even more proud from last week having some discussion with Chairman Bishop and Municipal Services Committee as well as Councilman Anthony Harrison, just talking about what more can we do to advocate for our kids. When you talk about the city of Cleveland, you got to talk about the family as a whole, and if you don't address the kids, you can't fix the adult. It's better to repair the children than grown adults. That is something that is something that I really believe in. And I believe, like I said, in municipal services, I think under the leadership of Chairman Bishop, we're going to have a real discussion and have a committee where we bring in the Browns, when we bring in Cleveland Foundation, when we bring in other different people to the table to talk about the need for us to be able to help our kids. We can't keep saying that our kids are lacking resources when we know there's other people in the city that can do more, and it shouldn't be solely for the Muni League to go after the funding. We should be in partnership, similar to what Councilman McCormick just said, figuring out how we work together to make sure this impact is there. Like I said, without Cleveland Muni League football, without me meeting Phil Cullum, without me meeting Coach Doom, without me meeting Mike Powers, I would not be the man I am here today, because those mentors wrapped their arms around me, first from football into life aspect. And this is just a great opportunity for Full Circle to say, 20-some years later, I'm here at the table to advocate for our youth and making sure Ordinance 378-2025 continue to support the Northeast Ohio Community Football League, because this is a great partner.
All right, thank you so much, Councilman Starr, and thank you for your advocacy. And even though it wasn't Cleveland Muni League, Muni League was a big part of a lot of our lives and helped develop a lot of us. So I think this is a great program. And once again, like everybody else said, if it's all of us putting letters out and writing letters and trying to help raise money on your behalf, please let us know. Okay? All right. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 378-2025 stands approved. I don't know why I hit the gavel, but I just did. Thank you.
Emphasis.
All right. Next up is ordinance number 228-2025, as amended by Council Members Polensek and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to amend sections 630.01 and 630.02 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by ordinance number 574-18, passed May 14, 2018, relating to criminal activity nuisances declared and action to abate nuisances and cost of enforcement. And the amendment states, is this a long amendment?
Several.
Okay. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In Section 1, add amended Section 630.02, Line 3, strike occasions and insert calendar days, underlined. Number 2, in Section 1, add amended Section 630.02, Line 4, strike 6, in quotations 6, and insert 12, in quotations. Through number 3, in Section 1, add amended Section 630.02 at Division A5, Line 2, and at Division B, Line 8, strike shall, and insert may in both places. Number 4, in Section 1, add amended Section 630.02 at Division B, Line 5, strike 6, and insert 12 in parentheses. Number 5, in Section 1, add amended Section 630.02 at Division D, Line 5, after provided, in quotations, insert in quotations, if the Director of Public Safety or his or her designee declares the property a nuisance pursuant to Division B of this section, the property owner shall be charged $250. Number 6, in Section 1, add amended Section 630.02 at Division E, Line 5, after, in quotations, abate the nuisance activity, insert a notice charging a fine for being the owner of a property that has been declared a nuisance property. This was dated 4/16/25, signed by Patricia McGinty Aston, Assistant Director of Law. Director or Assistant Director Carlton and Mr. Shatton.
Good afternoon, Council President, council members. Ordinance number 228-2025 to amend Section 630.01 and 630.02 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by ordinance number 574-18, passed May 14, 2018, relating to criminal activity nuisances declared and action to abate nuisances and cost of enforcement. If approved by council, ordinance number 2028-2025 would amend Section 630.01 and 630.02 of the codified ordinances relating to criminal activity nuisances declared, and action to abate nuisances and cost of enforcement. The summary, as you read, outlines the proposed amendments for Section 630.01, criminal activity nuisances declared, and 630.02, action to abate nuisances, cost of enforcement to strengthen the city's ability to address and abate nuisance activities. I have Assistant Director Shackner here with me to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Schatzner.
Thank you, Council President. Essentially, we worked on this ordinance in conjunction with Councilman Polensek when it was brought to our attention that certain items that activities that people expected that properties be declared a nuisance for weren't being enforced. And it wasn't necessarily an enforcement issue. It was as the ordinance as written. Previously, one of the major changes we made was that there's a provision in Section 8 that said to be a nuisance activity, a criminal conviction is not necessary. Well, how that was interpreted was that other things must be necessary. So we clarified in the ordinance that a citation or arrest are also not necessary, because very often these criminal nuisance activities, which are listed in Section A1 through 18, they're lower priority very often, like noise complaints and things like that. So by the time police may arrive at the scene, the activity may have been completed. With that, there was no one to arrest, there was no one to cite. This provision allows for the officer to take witness statements, use his own observations, and we will use a probable cause analysis to determine if there was probable cause that a criminal activity did occur on the premises at the time. One other issue we were arriving at was that there were people doing criminal nuisance activities, but they didn't qualify under Section A as a type of people that count as someone that engages in an activity. Previously, only the owner or an occupant of the property or someone invited with consent of the owner were the only people that would count towards a criminal activity nuisance. This creates a new category called persons associated with the property. So if somebody is just waiting to enter or shows up, let's say a parking lot, and they're acting up in the parking lot, making loud noise, disturbing neighbors, that could count towards a criminal activity nuisance, and that property owner eventually would have to take steps to secure his property, regardless if it was closed at the time the criminal activity was occurring. Other major changes are outlined in the handout that was provided. Councilmember Starr did proffer an amendment to extend the time period where criminal activities are counted towards a nuisance declaration. Previously, it had to be 4 criminal nuisance activities within a 6-month period. Councilman Starr proposed, and I believe it was passed in committee, to extend it towards 12 months. I will point out, and I've made the Assistant Law Director that is present aware, there is one more reference to the 6 months that need to be changed to 12 months, which is found in the civil fine section, which essentially after the 4th amendment, the 4th criminal activity nuisance is reported. If a 5th one occurs within a 12-month period, then it would be a $500 fine. So that needs to be changed from 6 months to 12 months, and he has an amendment prepared if the councilman or the
So,
president.
do anyone on the council want to proffer that amendment? Councilman Polensek, if you
I'll
can.
move that amendment be implemented.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. Councilman McCormick has seconded. Any discussion?
Can you repeat what that amendment does
Yes.
through the chair?
That amendment, it would be amending in subsection D of 630.02 subsection D in civil fines. You will find in line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Essentially for a 5th or subsequent nuisance activity as defined in section 630.01 that occurs within now amending 6 to 12-month period, 12 months after the date of such notice. So essentially you get notice that your property is declared a nuisance, and then another criminal activity nuisance is reported within a 12-month period, you're going to get a $500 fine, in addition to any abatement costs that may be associated.
So we're giving them more time?
No, so it is complicated. We've had several questions about it. So previously, within this timeline, you would have to have 3 or 4 within 6-month period. So at 6 months and 1 day, it resets.
Okay.
You would need, so now it extends out to 12 months. So at 6 months and 1 day, another nuisance activity happens, it still counts. You
Got
get
it.
fined.
Okay, thank
Until
you.
12 months is up.
And
Thank
through the
you.
chair to the council lady, so it's not that we wait that full year to review. This is being reviewed. I believe Sergeant Lanton pulls it every...
Every Monday.
Okay, that's what it sounded like. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is discussion regarding the amendment. Councilwoman Jenny Spencer.
Thank you, and I want to add that this handout that got circulated is very helpful to kind of break down the changes. So the amendment that's proffered now, that is not reflected on here. We're not changing any of the numbers on this handout. It is more, it's an addition to, and also, sorry, to go back, to clarify through the chair, the 4th, 5th, or any subsequent are fined $500 each?
Through the chair to the council lady. So on your 4th, when you're declared a nuisance, you're fined $250.
Okay.
On your 5th, it's $500, then $750, then $1,000, then $1,000 for every subsequent within that 12-month period. I'll tell you, historically, we have never, at least in the data we haven't seen in the past 5 years go above $500, that 5th nuisance period.
Okay, so this amendment then, for the 5th nuisance, would make it a $500 fine, 6th, $750, et cetera.
That's already in
Okay.
the original ordinance. It just extends the look-back period, the time period
Right.
in which to count them in.
Right.
And just makes it consistent with the previous amendment passed by council and committee, giving a 12-month period to look at being declared a nuisance, how many criminal activities occur within that period. This just makes it consistent with the fines also follow that same timeline.
Great. I think this is a good thing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, we have an amendment that's been offered and proffered as well as seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let's move on with this discussion. Councilman Michael Polinsik, did you have anything to add to this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My honorable colleagues, we heard this on 3 separate dates because due to the number of questions and discussions that we're having, I want to thank all my colleagues who gave input into this process. I want to thank Director Drummond. I want to thank Assistant Director Schechner and Carlton for their engagement. Mr. Chairman, what prompted me to press this issue is that, like most of my colleagues, have turned in what we refer to as the neighbors from hell or the problem spots. And I had worked with the previous director, the previous chief command staff, and I kept telling them repeatedly, we passed this law. I was the co-sponsor in 2008 with Donna Brady at the time, that we keep complaining, but we don't see anything happening on these problem properties. And I kept pressing them and pressing them and pressing them. And then I asked Director Drummond to provide documentation as to how many violations were actually issued, how many properties were cited. And I don't have to tell anyone around this table, the numbers that came back were pitiful. And there were some wards that never even had action taken in them. And I know council members had complained. So to his credit, the director and the administration, they said, we're going to get to the bottom of why this is not being enforced. And the amendments that came forth, the discussions we had, all our effort to address those problem properties, whether it be residential or commercial, that are destroying the fabric of the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And I made a case in point on Maple Avenue in Glenville. I've lost 2 wonderful families who've lived in that neighborhood for God knows how long, grew up there, were products of Glenville High School. Their kids went to Glenville High School. And there was a house on the street, absentee landowner, who rented to the worst of the worst. And there were 2 families that left that street because that nuisance was never dealt with. And so what I'm hoping with this piece, and I'm going to say this challenge to the administration again, if there's sections, once this passes, that again, that the field troops and the commander's field is not working, we need to know about it. We want this enforced. We want the quality of life enforced in our neighborhood. I'm not going to lose any more good quality residents because of these absentee landlords who rent the worst of the worst and they don't care about us, or these businesses, as I had again a business in Glenville, a bar, who felt that once the patrons walked out the door, they had no responsibility for them. But they congregated all over the parking lot, they congregated all over the place, and it became a nuisance at night, late night. This message, you've got to be responsible for what's happening on your property. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your diligence on this, all my colleagues who came to the committee hearings, to the administration once again, the Safe Director who did his due diligence on this matter, and I urge all members to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Pelisi. Councilman Jasmine Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I congratulate everyone for working so hard on this legislation. This is one of the legislations that were in place and we're like, it's not working, right? So through the chair, and anyone that could answer my question. So the issues that we have in our offices, let's say a neighbor has loud music, right? And we call the police. The neighbors call the police. They send me the videos and they say the police the videos. But when the police go out, let's just say there's no noise, right? They went to sleep, it's 2 in the morning. And so I guess they document it as arrival, no activity. And so that is not counted on that call, right? I think there has to be a certain call before they declare a nuisance. Does that change through this ordinance?
Through the chair to council, yeah, it does especially with our internal policies that allows us what Sergeant Lanton, who is detailed to Public Safety Administration, is directed to do, is because in the ordinance itself, it says that it's a probable cause that a nuisance activity occurred. And we sought clarification, and we're adding clarification within these ordinances that you can use evidence such as those videos, such as those witness statements of the people that called in. For Sergeant Lanton now, when he reviews, so he gets a list, it says, oh, there was at least 3 calls made, or 3 calls for service made to this specific property. Then he delves into, well, what did they type in the report? Was it warned and signed, or what have you? He now knows to look deeper into it, either talk to the officer, there's going to be a meeting with the command staff to ensure that everybody in their districts know what to do in those situations, so to provide the necessary details when they arrive to make it easier for Sergeant Lanton to make that probable cause determination. But he will be able to more easily determine probable cause because more things are going to fall under what is allowable. Not just checking, oh, was somebody arrested? No? Okay, we're going to ignore that one.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think there's also a gray area that I worry about. I'm also getting fake complaints, right? Where neighbors are preying on, let's just say, Latino families. That's just the place we're living in now, right? That's the climate that we're living now. So I worry about that, and I'm curious to know, how is that going to be addressed, right? If someone says, they've had loud music, or they're doing this, or driving ATVs. I mean, I've had two situations where a resident's complain, neighbor, when I go out, the neighbor's like, I don't even have an ATV. I don't even go outside, right? So that's the gray area that I'm kind of worried about.
Yes. Through the chair to the councilwoman, there are due process protections within the ordinance. The first appeal would go directly to the safety director, where he can speak with the person that has been accused and make that determination of whether or not there was probable cause in the first place. If they don't like the director's answer, then it could be appealed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, I would also say there's also an added protection with Sergeant Lanton, because there is a human element to all of this. It's not just a computer spits out 3 and it qualifies as a nuisance activity, and then, or 4, and then you send a letter, automatically gets out. Sergeant Lanton does an investigation to determine whether or not this is Hatfield McCoy, some sort of neighbor dispute that doesn't actually have grounding in probable cause that a criminal activity occurred.
Got it. Thank you. And then my last question is, even this weekend, and I'm not sure, Councilman McCormick, if you received the calls, but Roses, right? It's been a long time issue, 3-4 years, where they've been loud music. It's probably, more than that. And so we have not been able to go after the Roses owner. My question is, once this is approved, do we have to restart the complaints of that parking lot, or will the previous complaints carry over?
Through the chair, typically ordinances, especially those of quasi-criminal in nature, this used to be a misdemeanor of the 3rd degree. It isn't anymore. However, unless specified, it's not going to be retroactive. And there's a lot of case law in terms of retroactivity of certain ordinances of this nature that have penalties like this. It would be more so going forward, starting when the effective date of the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
If you could, on that point?
Yeah, on that point.
Councilwoman, would you allow me on that point?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
What's very important on this, especially to the viewing public, is to utilize 911, the CAD system, because those complaints are going to be taken off the CAD system. So it's not about just calling a councilman or letting a councilman know, or a district commander at a neighborhood meeting, but it's utilizing that 911. So now you can build that database, and you can say, well, wait a minute, we got a problem here. If the citizens don't call, or they just think that someone else is going to call, it's not going to get rectified. So I can't stress enough about citizens need to be proactive, continue to let your commander know at the district meetings or at neighborhood meetings. Obviously, we all get calls from our constituents, because I'm turning them in constantly, but the key thing is the 911 CAD system. That's all I can tell you.
Got it, thank you.
All right,
So-
Councilwoman Santana.
Thank you. And so, moving forward, all the previous calls, and there's hundreds of calls, those would be void. And then the resident would have to call again, and then you add up the calls, based on the complaint.
Through
Sure.
through the chair to the councilwoman. Short answer is yes. However, this new regime will really allow for those calls going forward. It would be very difficult, let's say, to go back, even if it was able to be applied retroactively, to go back and then look at those calls, how they were previously taken, to determine there was probable cause that a criminal nuisance activity occurred at this point. So this really shores up going forward that, yes, we'll have strong cases for these things. And to your point about the owner of Roses, there's another addition to this ordinance, which is the nuisance abatement plan, because previously it was optional. Upon your being declared a nuisance, you could avoid having to pay the nuisance abatement costs if you came up with a nuisance abatement plan. This makes it mandatory after the 3rd nuisance declaration, and my understanding of Roses is an out-of-state LLC
Yes.
that owns this, that if they fail to provide the nuisance abatement plan within 10 days, they will be fined $100 a day until they provide one. So this is to get the attention, especially of those that are a state. And for due process protections for people in the community, we don't want them kind of swept up in this type of thing. That's why that whole appeal process is in place, that, maybe English isn't their first language, or they don't have the necessary resources or know-how to create that plan. If they get the notice that, hey, we're going to start fining you because you didn't provide this, they could go and call us, meet with the director, speak with the director. Director can make a determination whether to extend the time, to void the charges and things like that.
Thank you. This is great. We finally have some teeth to go after these LLCs, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully support this legislation. I appreciate the assistant directors in front of us that have been diligent in writing this, and to Councilman Plensik and all the members that have touched this piece. I have an inbox 30 minutes ago from a person complaining about a nuisance property. This is a daily issue in our lives of people who do not care, do not live here, rent out, problem Airbnbs, problem this and that wreak havoc on the neighborhood. And as Councilman Plensik eloquently noted, our residents just leave. They don't, they're not gonna come to a public comment, but they just leave the city.
Yeah.
Right, they just go. And so this is such a fundamental problem in our neighborhoods. I'm so happy to see that we are putting this teeth, because these are individuals who, again, whether it is the property owner renting out short-term rental, for example, or individuals living in the unit, they don't care. They will only respond to pressure. Only respond. They do not care what Mike Plensik says. They don't care what the neighbors say. They don't care about anything else. They don't. They will only respond to pressure. And so I'm really excited that this is going through, because this is something that for folks that live in the city, that live in our neighborhoods on a day-to-day basis, we experience this stuff. And it is really, really problematic for day-to-day residents that live in our neighborhoods to deal with these issues. So, Mr. Chairman, I've read through the piece. Appreciate the questions here today. Is 100 steep enough? I don't know. But I know this was vetted by the Finance Committee, so the Safety Committee, so I'll let that sit. But again, with Councilwoman Santana's line of questioning, I actually had, when I first started, Councilwoman, I had somebody call, my president just told me to use more decorum. I had a Karen, I don't know if that's okay to say, who called on a neighbor. It was a couple who had originally come from Puerto Rico, had been in the neighborhood for a very long time, and the neighbor didn't like the music that they were playing, and they called my office all up in arms about the music that was coming from. It wasn't super loud, it was just, so there have been instances where there has been that type of activity, but I will tell you that is few and far between. Right. 99% of the cases that come into my office are legitimate 3 a.m, people riding on top of cars, shooting off guns, 100 people in the house, slamming on the doors next to them. This is what we're talking about, right? When we talk about these nuisance properties, people losing their lives in bars and restaurants over and over again. It's very real, these things that happen, and I'm really happy that we're finally putting forth a piece of legislation, quite frankly, to save lives. I've had tragic deaths in my ward in bars and restaurants, and families have lost loved ones, and all the way down from there. So, Mr. President, I fully support this. And actually, if I may, without objection to Councilman Plensik and yourself, I'd like to be added to this piece.
Thank you.
I think it's really important to maintain the quality of everyday residents in our city. Again, Mr. President, this may not be folks that come to public comment. This may not be folks that can attend a block club, but they deal with nuisance issues when they're present in our neighborhood. And if you got home from a hard day at work and you're trying to lay your head down on your pillow, and there's 100 teenagers from Strongsville next door, and when you come outside and you knock on the door and they said, our parents rented this for us, what are you gonna do about it? And go back inside. These are all real stories, I'm telling you. These are the types of things that impact your life. When you have 2 children in the house, these are the types of things that are going to impact your life and make your decision whether you're going to live in the city or Cleveland or not. So having a tool, Mr. President, to address those issues is critically important. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. And before we go to Councilman Hairston and Conwell, I know that Councilman McCormick asked to be added to this. Councilwoman Santana, is there anybody else? Okay, if there is no objection, can all of the members that you see here present be added? I'll wait till council to ask for everybody else, but all of the Finance Committee, including Councilman Richard Starr, would like to be added to this piece of legislation. All right? Okay. All right. Oh, sure. And then I have, next up is Councilman Anthony Hairston, Councilman Kevin Conwell, and then Councilwoman Jenny Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't take too much time, but I echo my colleagues. I'm glad to see this is finally happening here, that we are updating a very outdated, a very unusable ordinance that has done nothing to help us across the city, as we've heard. But I do have a couple of thoughts. But before that, Councilman Polensek talked about two families that I've known since birth who moved from their street because they just could not get help in the neighborhood I was born and raised, right down the street, 2 streets over. Been knowing them all my life. They went to school with my parents, right? Their parents were friends with my grandparents, right, in the Glenville neighborhood. They just could not get help. I ran into her in the store. I didn't know she had moved because I would still see a couple of cousins and other folks down by their home. And she said, well, matter of fact, Council, I got to call Mike and let him know that I'm gone. She's in Lyndhurst now.
Yeah,
One of them is
in
Lyndhurst.
South Euclid.
And the other lives in South Euclid. They just moved to the same area, right? And that's a shame because we had nothing in place to truly help them to address the problem house that has sat on that street and still there.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that the street's going to be vacant soon and abandoned because we just can't get it right. And so hopefully this nuisance, at least the police will have something to use to support them. And again, this is not blamed on the police. What we're saying is that we have a problem here and somebody needs to step up and do something about it. And so I'm glad that this body, along with the administration, is taking some steps to address this law that has not really helped us. So a couple of things. I see the mandatory submission after third criminal nuisance is not only to the 4th call do you get a fine. I think that should not be the case. I think that after the 3rd offense, you need to be issued a fine, and the submission is required after 10 days. It should be the fine. Why are we waiting to the 4 calls? I don't understand that. I don't sit on the safety committee, so I don't know that answer. So somebody can answer that for me through the chair. Why are we waiting to the 4th call to then cite them with the $250,000 fine? In addition to the $100 a day mandatory submission, should they not submit it within 10 days?
Councilman Polensek.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's a very valid point. One of the discussions we had, and I'll let the administration comment, Director Drummond felt that he wanted to set a pattern. He wanted to show that this clearly is a nuisance property. So then when the hammer comes down, there's no doubt that this is a nuisance property. That's why he wanted to show that pattern. So that's all I can tell you right now.
If I'm not mistaken, it was like a progression.
Yeah.
It's almost like how, I'm telling too many secrets now, but it's almost like how we do the cooperation agreements. We know it's going to be hard to grab a liquor license without having set up a pattern
Right.
in order to deal with it. And I think when I was watching the hearing, that's what it looks like he was trying to do. But
Sure.
administration, did you have something you want to add to that?
Through Council President to the Chairman, that's correct. We were looking at a pattern of abuse, and we felt that the 3rd one going into the 4th one establishes that pattern, and that's where we do start out at a number, and it keeps escalating. And they also have to work on the abatement plan at the same time, and if they don't have the abatement plan, there's a $100 a day fine. So it's kind of twofold that is in the same process at the same time. And I don't know if A.D. Schachner wants to add to that.
Yes, through the chair to the councilman. Very valid question. So as my colleague and Councilman Polensek was saying, it is determination of a pattern because this is only one tool in the toolbox, right? Fines can do so much. Used to have a criminal offense attached to it. That can only do so much. What we really want to see is the nuisance abated. That is the goal of these types of ordinances. So that 3rd offense triggers a letter that your property is in danger of being declared a nuisance, and you got to fix it. Whether it's hiring security if you're a business, building a fence if you own a vacant lot where things are happening, working on evicting a tenant if it's a problem tenant. We can't tell them to evict a tenant. They're coming up with a plan on how to fix that and bringing that property owner to the table and saying, how are we going to work together to fix this before we start charging you not only the nuisance abatement fee, like what's going to keep costing the Cleveland Division of Police to keep going to your home or property, But how are we going to fix this for the future? So when we were drafting this ordinance to make it more effective, we were really focusing on the changes and not trying to change too much with it in terms of
I'm sorry.
technology,
I know,
right?
technology is
Yeah.
right.
But so historically, it has been the 3, and then on the 4th, you're declared a nuisance, and then 5th, $500, 7th, $750, $1,000 for every subsequent.
Sure. Thank you for that. You know, I hear you. I won't debate that point. I guess I'll support the 4th as is written. I would like to see 3. I mean, to me, 3 is enough, right? Ask the people, right? Ask the people who live on these streets and have to deal with these issues. To them, that's more than the pattern. That's probably whatever you need to show that the house has been a problem. And that's maybe 3 that maybe police were called, right? Because sometimes they don't call the police, but residents have videos, resident has recordings, right, or other information about a particular house. So, I can live with that, but we need to closely monitor whether that is working for us as we move along through this process. You mentioned one thing to me. Part of the issue is when I've tried to get houses hit as a nuisance before after the three calls. Well, because of the coding from the officers when they went to the house, they reported either warned or advised or going on arrival, whatever the case is. And you mentioned that this would allow for Sergeant Lanton to perform a deeper review of the particular call. What in this change, can you point out to me what's going to give him that ability or signal to him that there should be a deeper look? Because I've personally had to call officers on a particular location multiple times because residents have called me, and I went to see in the middle of the night myself, and sure enough, there they were, right? I called. I'm sitting there watching. They come, hey, turn it down. You got, oh man, charm them up real good, right? They leave. Party starts again. Doom, 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 going, right? Come back, get out, say a few more words, they leave. Got to call them again because they think it's a game, right? And when they went back and looked at the report, they advised, they warned, we can't use those. Well, the change that we need is so that way these particular codes or the way, correct me, I don't know it's the right term, but the way they are logging or coding these particular interactions has not been useful for council members, residents, and others who have and are dealing with problem properties on these streets. So what in this ordinance is going to address that particular issue?
Through the chair to the councilman.
Through the chair, sorry.
Thank you. And I think that was the frustration that a lot of people felt because it already says in the ordinance that there must be probable cause to believe that an activity occurred, right? And probable cause is just more likely than not. 50% plus 1 is essentially probable cause. Now, if you're going by, the previous ordinance was a little ambiguous because when the rules of statutory interpretation states that if the legislator specifically called something out, that usually means everything else is excluded. So previously, the ordinance used to say, to be a nuisance activity, a criminal conviction is not necessary. Now, that's great, but if you're just looking at straight statutory interpretation, you think, well, it was likely the intent then that nothing else can count, like everything else is required for an instance. So a citation is required, an arrest is required. And just by your recitation of that event, that very often there's no one there to cite, or it's not an arrestable offense. Certain offenses pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code have to be observed by an officer in order for an arrest to be effectuated without a warrant. So by changing that line to be a nuisance activity, a criminal conviction, citation, or arrest is not necessary. So adding those two states like, okay, nothing actually has to occur. What only has to occur is probable cause to believe that a criminal activity occurred at the time. So we added another sentence to it, which is, a member of the Division of Police may rely on a witness's statement to find that there is probable cause that nuisance activity occurred. So if the 911 caller or someone who called the non-emergency line, they go and speak to that person afterwards, and they find that person to be credible, that can be used. And it all just has to be defensible when you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals if the person's going to go all the way up. And someone will have to testify that, yes, I believe that that criminal activity was likely to have occurred because I spoke to this person, Mr. What, Mr. A, Mr. B, Mrs. C, and they stated that at this time this activity occurred. I was called again, and I found that credible. I saw evidence of this, I saw evidence of that. So it provides more guidance to it. Before there was a question to the law department, there was a lot of back and forth of when it says warn and advise, does that count? And there was a lot of maybe, maybe not, depends. This makes it more clear.
Got it. Okay, thank you. 2 more points. And one of the issues we've had was folks cite DV, and you can't use those calls. Is that still the case through the chair?
That is still the case, yeah.
So what happens when, I was growing up on the same area that I told you about. There was this older couple, loved each other, right? But when they start drinking, and on the porch in that summer, and they get the grillers going, it can get problematic, right? And because that's okay for them, didn't mean that it was okay for the people who lived around them. And because it's two people who are together, how do we address that through the chair?
Through the chair.
It is continuous, right? I mean, I'll let you answer. Go ahead.
That's a very difficult question and situation. As a former assistant prosecutor, those cases were often the most difficult to prosecute, being that it was very hard to get cooperation with victims and witnesses in those stances. And that is a very difficult nuisance to abate, right? You have 2 people that rely on each other, have some sort of relationship, possibly a codependent relationship, no matter. It's a perpetual issue. So the ordinance itself doesn't say that other things related to a domestic violence can't be considered a nuisance activity, right? They're making a lot of noise. That could count, I think the danger was in when people write these ordinances and they want to excise domestic violence from an offense against another. Because usually offenses against another, as Councilman McCormick was stating about bars and problem houses where people are getting killed or assaulted, we want to go and address those properties and make sure patrons are being protected. That's not a property that is promoting criminal activity. It's almost an impossible problem, which is why this ordinance is only a tool in a vast toolbox of city resources, right? Police can only do so much through their enforcement measures. Yeah. It involves all of government approach when you have a problem house. So I believe that our take, and I can't speak for what we have done in the past, but I believe that when we see a nuisance property, when we see a certain property come up time and time again, and it turns like, oh, it's domestic violence, that's when we go and we find other resources to try and abate that nuisance. It's not something we're just going to ignore, like, oh, it's domestic violence, doesn't count. We're just going to take whatever efforts we can to ensure that people have peaceful enjoyment of their property.
And through the chair, I hear that, if you are telling me today that this ordinance doesn't particularly address those situations, however, the administration will, if these situations, once they review the cost for service, identify as a problem that could be DV, right? That the administration and the police department will step in to find other ways to interact with the folks there to address the issue that is happening at that house. Is that what I'm hearing through the chair?
Yeah, through the council president to the chairman, Obviously, when police has numerous calls at a residence for those type of instances, that's where we have to look at other resources that are available for those family members or for those individuals, and looking at referrals. We have the CIT teams that are great at not just persons in crisis, but those type of things when you're getting chronic calls for service to the house that fall outside of nuisance criminal activity, but obviously there's cause for concern at that residence, and the domestic violence issues where we want to make sure we're getting resources available for those residents. That's important.
Sure. And lastly, on that particular point, there are cases where people just are in toxic relationships that are okay with that, right? I mean, we all have known somebody or know someone who has been in a relationship, and it's like, why do you stay there, right? But we can feel that way, but it's up to individuals, right, to make the decision to address the situation on their own, right? And everybody has their particular reasons. You can't fault those people, right? You can't fault anyone in those situations. You try to get them help. You try to lead them and support them in any way that you can, and they need support. However, there are some situations, right, that folks, as I narrated to you, the couple who I grew up with, right, who that's just what they did. Was it okay? In my opinion, no, but that's their life, right? And some people are okay with the way that their relationship is, right? And it's not for any of us to judge their relationship. However, but when it becomes a nuisance for the people on the street who can't sleep, right? Who have to be, who's woken up to, cussing and fussing and fighting, right? No matter how short of a time it is or how long of a time period it is while they're out on the street, but it's a problem, right? And I just hope that, we don't just discredit those issues, that we really find other ways to help support that household in those issues that clearly they have, because the situation is continuing, all right? And lastly, Mr. Chair, City Council in the past has been notified by a paper copy in our mailbox. At time, I've received maybe email once or twice, but there's too many times I have not received a notice after a house has been deemed a nuisance, or, by other measures, it was flagged on the police department's radar. Does this ordinance talk about in the way in which Cleveland City Council members are notified?
Through the chair, through the councilman, it does not speak to notification of council members, no.
And Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if it's something you would consider. I think that we need to add to this piece the way the body is notified. And I would ask the safety chairman his thoughts on that as well, whether that is something we should add here, or how should we address that? Because I think not only members should be notified by hard copy, by email, and whenever there is a submission where the house has been deemed as a nuisance, whether somebody has been fined, we should know what's going on along the way with the particular house.
And Councilman, I agree.
Yes.
If you want to proffer that amendment, in the past, we've always had a police liaison because we don't have that. It's more so why we need to have this kind of stuff in legislation so that we could automatically get that information. So if you want to proffer an amendment and anyone would like to second, please feel free.
Sure, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to add, as it relates to notification to Cleveland City Council members, that Cleveland City Council, and Law Director, we can clean this up. You all understand the gist. That council members shall be notified in writing and electronically when a house has been deemed a nuisance, when a property has been asked to submit a mandatory submission, and also if and when a house has been fined after being declared a nuisance as well. So basically, we want to make sure that members are notified every step of the way as relates to a property being deemed as a nuisance, whether they've been asked to submit a nuisance activity remediation plan, and also if they've been fined as well.
So before we go to the attorney, did the administration want to offer any advice before we move to the attorney to make sure we clarify?
Council President, to the councilman, and you're asking for, because we generally send things out electronic to our members. You were asking for both electronic and a paper copy? I just want to clarify.
Yes, because I've received in the mailbox a hard copy before. I don't know, maybe that was when we had a liaison or something.
I
They
think
just-
that's when
maybe
we
they
had
did that.
liaisons. That's when we
Okay.
haven't gotten it since we had liaisons.
Because I've gotten it after that.
I'll be, if we could, Councilman,
Electronically is fine with me.
electronically.
Electronic.
That's fine.
Can we
We
do
can-
electronic?
Council President, yes, electronic.
Okay, that way it's on record, that's a good point.
That's fine.
Electronically, okay?
Council President, that's appropriate.
Can we, do you have that amendment, attorney?
Yes. I do some clarification through the chair and councilman that work that out.
Okay.
Okay.
The members, you all have the gist, right?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, do we have a second for Councilman?
I'll second that.
Councilman Polinsik is seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Polinsik, discussion.
I think it's an excellent suggestion that we be notified once a property is declared a nuisance with the address and the names of the parties that the notification is going out to, so we know who they
So,
are.
just want to make sure.
Yeah, listen up.
If the attorney, can you please listen to what Councilman Polinsik's discussion item is?
I want
Because it's
to
very clear.
just add to Councilman Harrison, or embellish it, that I want to make sure, and we're notified, that we have the address and the name of who the notice is being sent to.
Through the Council President to Safety Chair, when we send the notice out, it will have the property owner's name.
There you go.
And their address. So if you're getting the letter that we're sending to the property owner, would
Okay.
that suffice if you're copied
So
on
the
that?
Fine.
electronic letter
Yes.
will capture the information that the councilman is asking.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
that's
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did second.
Okay, all right, any other discussion on this 228-2025?
The amendment.
On discussion, just discussion.
The
We're
amendment.
just on the amendment. Right now, I have you down on the list, but for the amendment, yes.
I think there's any.
Okay. No further.
No further discussion, then we'll move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it, therefore the amendment carries. Back to the discussion, back to the topic, Councilman Harrison, any other remarks?
One last remark, and I will wrap up. One of the other issues, and I'm glad you just triggered this for me. In the past, I've had to ask our representative about the address, and I'm glad Councilman has called that, where they are sending the notice, right? Because what has happened sometimes in the past, they just send it to the house. So sometimes the owner never receives it, right? And some addresses has a different tax mailing address than the actual property address, because that may not be where the owner lives, right? And so I hope that we are also sending, I don't know if the ordinance speaks to where the notices and how they are getting addresses for the property owners. Are we working with the law department or building and housing, how when they send notices for vacant property or condemnation notices, they're able to search, do a title search to get other addresses for the particular owner and send notices to each of those locations or not parcel, but the addresses for the owner?
Assistant Director, Mr. Shatner.
Thank you, through the chair. In reviewing this ordinance, we saw that it was a little muddled, the notice requirements, so we did amend that. So the notice is going to be deemed as properly delivered if it's sent by first-class mail to the address the owner listed on the records of the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Office. So that's where it's going to be sent.
Okay.
Now, if it's returned to us as undeliverable, then it's going to be, the notice is going to be deemed as properly delivered if it's either posted on the front door of the premises or if we give it to the person in person. So we're required, of course, to give notice. And they're required, the owner of the property is required to keep their information updated on the auditor's former auditor, fiscal officer's website for the county. So when that is going to be noticed, if it goes there, they can't complain, oh, I didn't know. Well, we sent it to this address that's listed, and then we posted it on the door. You don't have an excuse after that.
Sure. And thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll end there as we go along. And if we need to add additional ways that we are able to reach the owner, then, we can look at that. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman Harrison. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Thank you very much. This is to the chair of safety. Chair, let me turn my microphone on. Safety Chair Michael Polensek, council member. I remember when I forgot what year, it was you, Donna, Brady, and I that championed for the first nuisance law. And we were sitting around a table like this, but I didn't get any outcome measures from it, really. So, what are you thinking? We push the nuisance law, Chairman. I don't want to just push legislation and it's on the books, but we got nothing from it. You remember?
Yep. Well, that's, Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleague, that's what prompted my discussions
We
with
do need it.
Director Drummond,
work.
is that we had the law, that we worked with the law department at the time to create the law, and yet we saw no enforcement of it, or very little enforcement. So that's what led to this legislation being amended, being updated, that now we can start to have a nuisance law that's meaningful. And I want to thank Councilman Hairston for his amendment. So now we can start to get a report back as to exactly what they're doing. And again, I'm going to say to the administration, be prepared to keep the proper documentation, because this is an issue we're going to continue to drill down on. How many houses have been cited, where have they been, properties been cited, who's been cited, et cetera, because we got to get beyond the chaos that we're experiencing in our neighborhoods. So, Councilman, I'm hoping, like all of us, that I'm hoping for the best now with these changes.
Man, I got to tell you, through the chair, the council member, I've been doing my own nuisance law. I call Commander Johnson. He sends the police to my house, and then we do knock and talk, and I knock on the people's doors. Because what we pushed, you, Donna Brady, and I, former council member Donna Brady and I, they didn't execute on it. So I like what Councilmember put the Councilmember Anthony Harrison amendment on it, that they could report back to us. I want to ask you this through the chair. Can we put these smoking vape shops on it as well? Because you got down here, persons associated with the property includes activities of individuals in parking lot, bars, vacant properties who were not invited or known by owner or occupant. Because those vape and those smoke shops and vape shops, they're issues also. Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilman, that was just examples to put on the chart.
Okay.
It's actually not specifically called out. So those would count, people
count.
associated with those that are engaging in criminal nuisance activity. And I would add again to Councilman Polensek's previous point about the importance of calling either the non-emergency line or 911 when a person suspects that a crime is being committed on a property, because that's how it's tracked. That's not by phone calls personally to the director or to the commanders. It's tracked through the dispatch system. So if you make a call to 911 or to the non-emergency line, that is going to be tracked in a manner that can be pulled by Sergeant Lanton in determining if enough activities occurred at a property.
Will we show who the witness is? Let's say if Ms. Smith or Mrs. Jones is a witness, to it show that underneath it? Not to us, but for the supporting evidence.
Through the chair, the Division of Police will be able to access information that's not necessarily open to the public necessarily, to be able to follow up and investigate to determine whether there's adequate probable cause to believe that a criminal activity occurred.
Okay, that's great, because the residents call a lot of times, and the council members know, they reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we say, did you call 911 or did you call 621-1234? Mm-hmm. And then they turn around and say, what I got you for? Mm-hmm. What I got you for? Or we tell them not to discuss it in our meetings, because people are in our meetings taking notes and they know who told the story. So a lot of them are afraid, and rightfully so. Through the chair.
Mm-hmm. Through the chair to the councilman, the members of the Division of Police are aware of those types of concerns and efforts are taken to ensure that any witnesses are protected. And really, when it comes, there's really no very unlikely scenario where this will lead to a witness being revealed or Carla being revealed.
Okay.
Because what would occur if somebody decided to appeal it all the way to the Board of Zoning Appeals? It would be either Sergeant Lanton, probably Sergeant Lanton, making the case for, I got this, because the rules
Gotcha.
of evidence don't necessarily apply. You say, I have probable cause to believe because they spoke to the witness who said this without identifying who that activity occurred. So I'd advise the people to please call.
Yeah, through the chair, because I don't want them not to call. They call us. The council members will tell you that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kevin Bishop, Councilmember Mike Polensik, Councilmember Anthony Harrison, Councilmember Starr. They call us, and they're afraid to call the police. And they call the councilman, and they'll say that quicker than a heartbeat, what I got you for? What I got you for? I'm not calling because the police might come to my house. And then they'll call us. So, you know, we got to let them know that they can call, and we have to let them know no one is going to visit them. What was the other piece? The witness piece, and you said the smoke and vape shops, they're included.
They would be, through the chair, they would be included, because the actual definition as listed in the ordinance just says person associated means any person whenever engaged in a nuisance or nuisance activity enters, patron visits, or attempted to patronize or visit like a property. It doesn't delineate. For the chart, that was just as an illustration of the type of issues that I believe council members were having in terms of types of properties that previously we could not declare a nuisance because the activities were being performed by people that were not invited to the property or the owner or occupant of the property.
So let me ask you this last, and I'll close. You know what I would like to see? This is attached to their liquor license. So when we go downstate or when we fight, we need supporting evidence that we put a cloud on their liquor license or an assessment on their liquor license, or same thing with the smoke shops. If we have to close it down, I don't want to say that on December the 11th that there was a nuisance issue and we have no supporting evidence. So you got to put that on there as a mark on their liquor license, and that will help us out. Through the chair.
Yep.
Oh, through the chair to the councilman. I can't really speak to liquor license law and how those hearings go or what evidence is presented. But if somebody is declared a nuisance and has a certain number of call-outs from the police department to a property, I cannot say because that is not my
Councilman Conwell,
wheelhouse.
Yes.
to your point, I've been in those meetings when I'll show 50 calls, and then the opposing lawyer will say, yeah, but the city didn't act on the nuisance, so you're completely on point. This should help that process when presenting in front of the liquor panel.
Because we'll be acting on these nuisances.
And you act on it. And so when we over there, you're going to track and document it anyway, so we can pull the supporting evidence.
Through the chair to the council.
Through the chair. I'm sorry, Chair.
The department does track this, and we'll be able to track how many letters have gone out, how many new properties been declared, how many fines have been given for any given property. And in fact, we are in communications with Urban AI and working on adding a map to the mapping software where you can identify properties and see how many nuisances, declarations there have been, or call-outs, things like that.
Yeah, it's happening in the right time. So thank you very much. I don't need, what you think, we don't need to make an amendment on that. We'll just get the supporting evidence, Mr. Chair, from the safety department. You think?
No, I don't think we need an amendment. I think we're in good shape. I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm just, just asking.
Thank you, Councilman. Was that it for your testimony, sir?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Spencer.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick. I wanted to briefly go back to.
And happy Dingus Day, Councilwoman.
Happy Dingus Day. All righty. Everyone's Polish today, including myself. I wanted to briefly go back actually to what you raised, Councilman McCormick, and what Councilwoman Santana raised, which I think is so important, which is there are instances where neighbors, because they don't like someone's music or they have different style or it's just not to their liking, they will call the police on their neighbors. And I know that we all represent really diverse communities, and this is definitely an issue. And my first response to them is always, have you introduced yourself to your neighbor? Do you know their name? Have you talked to them? But notwithstanding that, I think this was so important that Councilwoman Santana brought this up. I'm really grateful to you, Councilwoman, before we pass a new ordinance like this. I wanted to, therefore, for my comfort with the ordinance, go back to, through the chair, to the due process piece that you, Assistant Director, mentioned, just about protections for people who were, for lack of a better word, accused through this process of potentially being a nuisance property. Can you explain a little bit more about what is the due process protections for people who may be wrongly accused? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman. That would be in new section E, appeal. So after any notice that is received by a property owner, they have the opportunity to appeal that notice directly to the Director of Public Safety or his or her designee. The way what that looks like is essentially an in-person meeting where they discuss what occurred. The property owner has an opportunity to explain why this was occurring, why it wasn't, what the situation is, and then the director makes his or her decision at that time. If the owner is not happy with that decision, then they may appeal that to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I'm sure every councilman has sat through the Board of Zoning Appeals at least once, listening to that, and they will be able to make their case to that independent body.
Okay. Thank you. That was all I had. Councilman McCormick wanted to clarify that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate that. Is there any additional commentary on 228 as amended? Hearing none, 228, 2025 stands approved. Please sign. As amended, stands approved.
Thank you, my colleagues.
All righty. Ordinance 330, 2025 by Councilmembers Plensik and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to enter into one or more agreements with Case Western Reserve University for professional services necessary to continue implementation of a data collection analysis process for the Division of Police, Department of Public Safety for a period of 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director. Hi.
Hi.
330.
To the chair. If passed by council, ordinance number 330, 2025 would authorize the Director of Public Safety to enter into a contract with Case Western Reserve University to continue the implementation of a data collection and analysis process for the Division of Police for a period of 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Public Safety. The cost of the contract shall not exceed $250,000 per year. This will enable the Division of Police to continue the partnership with Case Western Reserve University to implement a system for the collection and analysis of police data, to establish best practices on data collection procedures, to create data mapping specifications and protocols to support the Division of Police in support of the Department of Justice consent decree requirements. With me, I have Dr. Anderson and Dr. Issa, who will help assist with any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Good afternoon. How are we doing? All right, so this is the, how long have we been in this agreement with Case? Do we know? 10 years? Okay. And we are happy with their services that they're providing? Doctor, good morning. Afternoon.
To the chair, good afternoon. Yes, I can attest to the impactful and effective work that I've seen. We are at a point in the consent decree where data is what matters. And we have seen lots of great products come out of the Case team, as well as in not limiting that to the open data portal that they've worked with for. So we have 2 areas of the consent decree. There's 8 areas of the decree. We have 2 areas of the decree that are on the open data portal, use of force and CIT, which are critical areas for our communities.
Okay. All right. So in short, you are happy with their services?
I am very happy.
All
with
right,
their
thank you. Councilman Polensek, this went to the Safety Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleagues and to the administration, this data is very important as we deal with the DOJ and the federal monitor. So all this data that's being collected is very, very important. So I wholeheartedly support this legislation.
Thank you, sir. Do I have any additional questions or comments on 330-2025? Hearing none, ordinance 330-2025 stands approved. Please sign. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All righty. Without any additional, Madam Clerk, I believe that's it, correct? All righty. Given that, this Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of Cleveland City Council is adjourned.